So hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Antone, and I'm the Senior Marketing and Events Coordinator at MAR, as well as the producer of our free webinar series. Our webinar today is Intro to Remine Docs Plus. This webinar will cover the basics, including how to access your account, create a transaction, and how to use the platform tools. After our live session, the webinar will be recorded and added to our website at marealtor.com under webinars and on our Remine Docs Plus page. If you have any questions throughout the session, please type them in the bottom of the chat box on your screen and we'll hold a Q&A. Our presenters today are Amir Kadri, Ryan Welch, Mandy Dennis, and Amanda Bacon. Amir has spent the last 17 years in and around real estate. Over the last 6 years, he has worked in leadership roles in technology companies and is currently the VP of the transaction management team at Remine. Ryan has spent the majority of his career supporting customers in software companies and currently leads the forms team at Remine. Mandy began her real estate career in 2005, obtaining her broker's license in North Carolina, and was an MLS director for 9 years. She's currently an account manager with Remine supporting MAR. And Amanda has over 10 years in customer service and is now the customer support manager at Remine, where her team supports all inquiries sent in by over 1 million Remine users. Now, over to our presenters.
Thanks, everybody. So as Lauren said, my name is Amir. I'm going to be running the presentation today. As we go through the presentation, my colleagues, Mandy, Amanda, and Ryan will kind of be fielding questions through the chat. So please feel free to ask questions as needed. And if I need to stop for any reason, one of them will let me know and we can address the questions on the fly. But by and large, the flow of the presentation, since there are so many attendees, will predominantly be just me kind of talking through the platform, walking you through how to log in from various MLS logins, etc., and some of the nuances between the markets. And then we'll do some mock kind of transactions so you guys have a sense. So I guess before we start, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining. We're very excited to have this launched in Massachusetts, and we appreciate everyone's time. There's a lot to cover, so without further ado, I think I'll probably dive right in. The first thing I like to start with is a bit of a preamble. In that preamble, I think it makes the most sense to sort of discuss the difference between what Remine Docs Plus is and what sort of maybe some of the historical tools that you've used in the past might resemble. I like to make the analogy that, you know, a lot of the tools that are in the market today, they kind of replicate a 20, 30-year-old kind of methodology. Okay. And what I mean by that is 20, 30 years ago, you would have gone to your computer to basically, you know, create an offer. Then you would have gone to your printer after you've printed it. Once you've printed it, then you would take a pen and take that piece of paper and mark it up, or a highlighter. And after that, you would, of course, you know, fax it, email it, scan it, drive, whatever the case may be, to meet your customers. Today, what you've got is effectively the same process, except you're doing that inside of a computer. So you go to your your form creation tool. That tool now allows you to create an offer. Then you'll effectively print it to PDF, which is what the e-signature components are going to be. And that PDF is basically a piece of paper. And so when you've got that piece of paper, then you've effectively got an e-signature tool that's going to allow you to do strikeouts and mark-throughs, and that's effectively a digital pen, if you will. And then, of course, emailing has replaced the fax machine. But basically, that methodology is still replicating that same 20-year-old kind of practice. What Docs has done is it's a collaborative multi-party document. So it is like a cloud-based document. It's one document, live or not live, shared or not shared, I should say. And so instead of creating one, printing it, keeping track of multiple PDFs, it is what we call smart forms. And these are cloud-based, you know, documents that allow everybody to access the documents when they need to be. Okay, so basically what the problem we're trying to solve here is this guy. it's very difficult on a contract like this to sort of make heads or tails as to who has signed what. So all of these initials and all your counteroffers and everything that's going back and forth, these effectively happen here, and you can't really decide if this is related to this price change, that price change, or that price change. It's very easy to make mistakes, as you can see, and this is essentially the problem we're solving. Because in order to get here, you probably have 4 different sets of the same document that have been floating around, maybe more. You have PDFs everywhere, and you've got strike throughs, and obviously with faxes back in the day, there was degrading of the quality of the information as well. That's effectively the problem we're solving. What we've got now is, of course, this. Okay, so basically what I was getting to is that you would have in Remine Docs, you'd have basically one party, like we'll call it a buyer agent and 2 buyers, and you have another party, and we'll call that a listing agent and 2 sellers. And essentially what you're going to end up having is a document that gets sent from one party to the next. So if you can imagine, we send an offer like this. That offer is going to be version 1, and we'll call it maybe 500,000. Okay. And then, of course, when the listing agent sends a counter offer back, that is going to come back like so. And that would be more like version 2, and that might be like $520,000. And essentially, as these documents go back and forth, the system keeps track of every interaction that was made. And it basically will also keep an audit trail of all of that, and it will keep the document that you're looking at as clean as possible. Okay, so with that, let's start talking about ways to get into the application. All right, so I'll make this as big as I can, and unfortunately, this is probably about as big as it's going to get. So if anybody needs to sort of like see this again, just please like review the recording afterwards. I think if you're kind of listening to me, you'll get a sense as to what I'm doing if you're having trouble seeing it. Obviously, on your own Zoom, you can zoom in as well. Those Zoom controls are at the top, so feel free to do that. Okay, so there's 3 MLS essentially markets in Massachusetts in order to get into this platform. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. So we've got Berkshire, Cape Cod, and MLS PIN. I'm in my MLS PIN account here. Every different account you'll log into via your MLS. Okay, so essentially, if I was to log in to MLS PIN, I would go to the Pinergy page. Okay, you'd log in from here. You're going to click Remine like so. That's going to lead you to your login page. Okay, and on your first login, you're going to want to create your account. So why don't I just do that here now to show you how that works. I'll log out. So bear with me a second here. I'll just log out of here. There you go. So you'll end up being here. You're going to click Remine. You're going to go over here. If it's your first time logging in, you're going to put create an account. You're going to put in your MLS ID. It will send you an email to authenticate your account to your email that is associated with the MLS. And that is how you're going to get in. Okay. Once you come back after you've created your account, then you're simply going to use your MLS ID and the password that you're making as you log in the first time. And then you land here on Remine. So an MLS PIN, and I know for the Berkshire and Cape Cod users, this is a little bit unnecessary, but we'll go over each market here quickly. For MLS PIN users, Remine was already in your market, okay? We already had the ability for users to join Remine in the past, but now Docs Plus has become the upgrade for Massachusetts. So one thing to note is on this left-hand side, you might see different features. That's kind of depending on what you've got in Remine before. We have either what we call starter or pro. If you have a starter account, you should be able to get to Docs Plus from here. If you have a pro account, you should be able to get to Docs Plus from here. Now, one thing to note, if you do actually try to get in here and it asks you to upgrade, the way that we validate that you are a PIN user that should be seeing Docs Plus from a Massachusetts Association Realtor benefit point of view is specifically based on your NERDS number. Okay, so if you click here, your NERDS number is going to be affiliated with your account and your email. That NERDS number is going to tell us this user is with MAR. And when you click this, you're going to see Docs Plus. Otherwise, you're going to see what we call just regular Docs. And when you click on that, it's depending if you're in a starter or pro account, you're going to probably see an upgrade button, or you'll enter in sort of a simplified version of Docs. So if you do see that upgrade button, the first thing you're going to want to check is if your NERDS number actually has your MAR affiliation with it. If it does not, that's the problem. And if it does, then please reach out to support and we'll resolve that as they come up. Okay. So coming back to this, if you're a PIN user, again, just to recap, you log into Pinergy, you go down here, you press Remine, you create your account with Remine, then you click on Docs Plus over here, and that leads you into the application. Okay, so you should land on your dashboard. One thing to note when you're on the dashboard is in the bottom, it's going to tell you what your role is. That is a Docs role. It's not a real life role in your system. Brokers and admins are basically going to be considered admins. Office manager would be an admin. Agents, license assistants, things of that nature are going to be called agents. So kind of ignore the fact that it said admin, other than the fact that you should see that kind of functionality. So again, if you're an office manager or a broker or something to that effect, it should say admin down here. If you're an agent or something to that effect, it should say agent down here. And that's essentially the major differences. I'm going to put a pin in this for 1 second, and I'm going to move over to how you do the same thing for Cape Cod and Berkshire. So as an example, if I'm in Cape Cod, I'm going to log in. Sorry, this is Berkshire, excuse me. If I'm in Berkshire, you're going to log into your Flex MLS system. You're going to go to menu and you're going to go to products and Remine. Okay, once you click on that, that's going to lead you over to our dashboard. And the difference in these two markets is they are Docs only markets. They don't have the Remine Pro setup. So that is essentially going to just take you directly into Pro. And I have a pop-up blocker here, so we're just going to allow that. So pay attention also for that if you have pop-up blockers. And that's going to lead you right into Remine again, okay? If you do need to go back to Pro for any reason, there is some functionality that is in Pro, so I'm just going to highlight what that is here quickly. You'll notice on the left, the majority of this is grayed out. So that is the case. You are going to have in your system here, you're going to have contacts and settings effectively. Okay, so the settings are down here under your name and contacts are there. In Cape Cod, it is exactly the same. I won't waste your time kind of going through it, but you'll log into your Clarity instance and you'll click on Remine Docs here and it'll do the same thing it just did a second ago. All right. Okay, so with that said and done, I'm going to come back to this demo. Okay, so that being said, this is the dashboard for Remine Docs. Okay, so as you have Remine Docs here, I'm using my PIN account. So you guys that are in Berkshire and Cape Cod, you will log in the same way as I just highlighted a second ago. Once you get to this stage, you've got your dashboard. On the left-hand side, I will quickly go over what these functions are. You have my transactions, which is basically your folder library for all your transactions. The first rule of thumb you're going to have here is one transaction per, one folder per transaction. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind for now, and we'll come back to why that's important as we go through. You have a package library, form library, clause library, and checklist library. These 4 items, you want to think of these as builders. These builders allow you to create templates, essentially, or things that you can use in a transaction. So a package library, I like to think of as like a giant cut and paste. So that being said, here with your giant cut and paste, you can come into a package library. You can create a package in my packages. Okay, as an example, I'll do one quick here just to say test. I can add content like forms. So I'll just come in and grab a form or two. Whatever, something like that, let's just say. And then I can customize these. So if I wanted to add some things here, I could just sort of pre-template these things out as I see fit. Something like that. And once I'm done kind of customizing this form, I can press done. And then my form will have this little gear icon that indicates that I've customized it. And now that would be a giant cut and paste that I can use later. So I can have 5, 10, 15 forms here. I can customize each one, and then I can use that package later on. Okay, so that's the package library. Form library on the left is very similar in the sense that it's a way to sort of just see forms. Okay, so if I needed to look at a form like such, and I just wanted to have a preview of it or download it, at this point now I can use it or just download. Okay. Clause library is a system to basically build your own clauses that you can grab and use inside a contract whenever you see fit. Your broker can distribute these as well to you, and so can the state if we so choose. Okay. Next, we'll have the checklist library. This is very simple. It is what it sounds like. You can build a checklist, or your broker can do the same for you. So when you're building a checklist here now, this would be something like I could build a listing checklist, and I would say order sign, you know, order a lockbox, take measurements, take pictures, whatever I wanted to. Or my broker could say that you need to submit these next 10 forms in order to have your transaction closed. So those are two different ways that you can use that. Submissions, I'm not really going to touch right now. This, just for lack of a better explanation, is a tool that allows you to submit documents to your back office for completion. So if your office decides that docs will become sort of their source of truth for submitting contracts, then you should probably look into how you submit them at that point. But at this point, since we're very, very new, you're going to want to make sure that your broker has made the switch before you start using that system. So just keep that in mind, please. Announcements is an admin feature. I'll ignore that. And on your setting page down here, you're going to have your email, your signature that you can create. That's your stamp that gets applied to all documents. You're going to have your association. This must say MAR in order for you to see the forms. You're going to need this to say Massachusetts Association of Realtors. Again, that's coming from your NRDS number. So keep that in mind. If your NERDS number is associated with a MAR affiliation, then we'll pull that up and this will be here, and you'll then have access to the MAR forms. One other question I think is probably going to come up is the Greater Boston forms. I think I'll probably just address that now. We just received those forms not very long ago, maybe just over a week, and we need some time to program them and get them into the system. So the Boston forms are coming. They're not here today, but they should be here fairly soon. So just keep that in mind as well. We just received them, unfortunately, so it'll take us a little bit to get those done. Your role here is going to be about like I said, admin or agent. This is your document time zone. Okay, so every document you create when you log in will be related. For me is Eastern. For you guys, it'll probably be the same thing. And down here, you have some preferences that you can toggle on or off. All right. So that's basically it for this section. This next section I would again come back to here is your dashboard. Okay. On the right-hand side, I have placed this red placeholder. Kind of ignore that. It's just a frame of reference to sort of tell you what context the screen is under. So as I go through this presentation, at some point, I'm going to move from buyer agent to buyer client. Then I might go to listing agent and seller. So that is just a frame of reference to make you understand kind of what the screen is doing. As I go through 4 different people through a transaction, that can kind of get complicated to keep track of. So just please keep in mind with this, and I'll be diligent with moving it as we go through here. Okay. So I think the simplest thing to do now is to go through how to use the system kind of the old-fashioned way. Okay, so without the smart forms and with just the PDFs, and for those of you that are trying to take like a baby step into the application, this is probably a good place to start. So what I would suggest then is, let's assume I'm going to be uploading a PDF that I've either got on my computer or that I received from another agent in an email, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to press upload. I'm just going to grab a random file here from my desktop. I'll create a folder. All right. Now you can see here, and I'm going to zoom in like crazy. this is got, it says PDF here, okay? That's important. There's basically three kinds of icons you're going to see. There's a PDF icon, a smart form icon, and basically an empty icon. Excuse me. The empty icon means it's like a different file type, something like a picture or a Word doc or a movie file or something that the application's not going to use, but you can store it there. PDFs and smart forms behave two different ways. So as I'm going through this demo here, we're looking at a PDF. The most important thing in this document is basically at the top. This is your most important rule of thumb here for today. So if there's anything that we're going to take, that you're going to take away from today, it is the people at the top here, these roles. Docs Plus can do a lot of things with the smart forms. The smart forms have all kinds of intelligence programmed into them, but they need to know who's who in order to do that. So the most important thing in any of these documents is to assign who is who in the zoo, like I like to say. So as you can see here, my name is Remine Support. So obviously that will be your own name, but there's no buyer, no seller, or no listing agent associated here. So I'm going to edit people by either clicking here or people up top. I'm going to add some buyers. So here I can just add a stored contact that I have, and I can show you how to do that in a second. So that's Billy. I can add a seller if I wanted to, it's up to me. And another agent if I wanted to, that's up to me. And when I come back to the document, now I have Billy, Sally, myself, and Larry. Okay, so now this is a PDF like we're very familiar with. If I needed to do anything on here, I'm just going to click draw. And then, I can make a rectangle. I can change the color on the right. I can change the thickness. If I needed to just use a straight line, obviously I can do that as well. And of course, there's other tools here like a freehand tool and a checkbox or check mark. If I needed to make initials, I'm going to pick the person whose initials I want. So in this case, let's say my buyer, I want them to initial here and here. Okay. And then down here, one thing to note, the way the system works is you have to click finish to take the little dropper away. So if I wanted to say 1, 2, 3, 4, it makes that very fast. I click finished and now I'm back to my regular cursor and I can start clicking them and deleting them if I wanted to. Okay. One other thing to note is the text box function. I can actually drop text boxes for other people to fill in. So as an example, if I wanted Billy to type in his own name, I would take a Billy text box and place it here. Okay, if I wanted to fill in something for myself to write in, I'll use my own name and put it, I don't know, let's just say I want to write something here. So there we go. And if I needed signatures or whatever the case may be, I can do that. And I can obviously fill in things here if I wanted to as well. Okay, so let's say that's done. Now, if I needed to get this signed, this is also important. Even though it's a PDF, we still basically allow for the same signing mechanism that we have. And so that signing mechanism is basically that it's cloud-based. So you can see up here at the top, it says private. That means nobody else can see this because I haven't shared this document with anybody else. So before I share it, I'm going to sign my own share. If there's anything for me to sign, I'm going to click sign up here, sign the document. And again, I don't have to print it or email it to myself or anything like that. I just sign the document. Oops, I don't have anything for myself actually. So why don't I go back here one quick step and put a tag for myself. Now I'll sign it. So now I'm going to sign my own document like such. There I go. And now when I'm done, I can either say I'm done and leave it for now, or I can sign as another. Okay, so if I wanted to actually get my customer to sign this, my buyer in this case, now I would click sign as another. And I can either have them sign it now as if we were together, like at a Starbucks, for example, or I can send it. So if I sent it, now I'm just gonna go to my send screen here. It's showing me the document. I'm gonna click my buyer and I'm gonna say send or sign. Okay, now you'll notice once I've done that, that this has changed from private to party. So that means I have shared this with somebody in my party or my team, for lack of a better explanation. So effectively now that has gone out. It's now part of the team for me and my buyer to see. So let us move over to being a buyer. Okay, so I've changed the context and I'll refresh here. Here we are. Okay, so this is the buyer's experience. Now, please excuse me. A buyer would click here, but I'm gonna copy and paste the link so I can use this in another window. So just keep that in mind that a buyer would just sign this, but I'm going to just change my window because I'm using so many different, there we go. Any customer wouldn't have done that. They would have just clicked it. So please keep that in mind. Because I'm being 4 people on one computer, I have to keep track of different browsers. So just ignore that fact that I'm doing that, please. As a buyer now, I would receive this. Okay, so here's the buyer. The buyer's interaction now would be to basically review and fill in anything before they want to sign it. So the buyer would review this document. It's their job to fill in their name here. So now they would write in their name. And then they're ready to sign. So they're going to press sign, click their initials. They can draw their initials if they want to, or they can type them. If there was a signature block here for them to use, it would have asked for signature, but I just put in initials. So it's going to ask for 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And once that is done, the buyer's going to get a copy of his email. The buying agent's going to get a copy to say that the buyer has opened the document and that the buyer has finished. So obviously you'll have these email mechanisms to tell you that these things have been done. So just keep that in mind. But they are all done. So let's see if I have the email here. I can show you again. So now I'm back to being the buyer agent. And I can see here that Billy has opened my document at 10:29 a.m. And then I'm going to get a summary here that says Billy was asked to sign and fill this document, and he has done that. I can now click this if I like, and it will show me that. And so as you can see, it's showing me that it's for me to review. There are signature changes on this document, and I can open up this document, and there's Billy's signatures and Billy's name. Okay, so this is the basic PDF tool. There's some other functionality here. You can see this is still on the party side. If I want to send this to another agent now, I can do that. So I'll go to send. I will now come back here and I would pick the other agent. And I just write something like offer. And then you notice that's now changed to everyone. So this is now my version 1, and I've shared it to my party, and now I've shared it to the other side. So everyone now can see this document, okay? So just keep that in mind that this PDF behaves the same way as the smart forms do from a sharing logic perspective, but as a form itself, this is probably something you're all very familiar with. So I'll probably move on and actually get into the real meat and potatoes here now. But beforehand, of course, I can take a brief pause and see if there's anything I should address with that. So far, so good. Alrighty. So the real meat and potatoes here is, of course, the smart forms and the Remine Docs Plus functionality. Again, I call this a multi-party collaborative system. Again, I'll try and do this as slow as possible, so bear with me as I go through, but it is quite a bit to cover. What we're going to do here is like a mock transaction. So effectively, we'll have a buyer who's going to submit an offer to a buying agent, and we'll go from there. So let me just grab an MLS number here before we proceed. So just bear with me here one quick second. I'm just going to just find an MLS number. Sure. I could also create a transaction from here. If you guys are using Pro, keep that in mind. There's an opportunity. Just click this button and it's going to launch the transaction pop-up. Or, of course, I can come back and I can create a transaction. So I am going to start from the dashboard. Create a transaction. Just going to cut and paste the MLS number there. It's going to give me the seller's name. I'm on the buying side. It's now going to give me the listing agent's name. These are all real people. Obviously, this is live today. So what I'm going to do here is remove the real people and put in fake people. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of Arthur and Eleanor and Thomas. And I'm going to put in Billy Buyer, Sally Seller, and Larry Lister. Okay. I can click these and add emails if I don't already have them. Okay. Something else to note here. I'm just going to pick some forms. Okay. So now where it says vendor and staff, this is my office. So in any of your accounts, this should be, Keller Williams, Remax, Berkshire Hathaway, whatever the case may be, that'll be your office. And down here, I have Massachusetts Association. I would click this, and then here are all my forms. Because I just told the system a second ago that I'm on the buying side, it's graying out the listing side forms. I can still choose them if I want to, but they're just being grayed out just so you don't make a mistake. If I click all forms, obviously it will show them all. So if I need some forms here, I can obviously search, grab a buyer representation document, grab a purchase document as well. And I can grab whatever else I want to. Okay, I'll just use these two for now. The other thing I want to call out is if I press this eyeball, that allows me to sort of preview this document before I add it to my transaction, just to make sure it's the right one. And if I'm happy with these, then of course I can move forward. Okay. The other thing to note here before I move forward is this form section are the master forms. Okay. On the left-hand side, I have packages. And this is where I just made this package a second ago called test. This is my giant cut and pastes. These are templates. They can come from my office or they can come from myself. Okay, so if I wanted to use these, I could go here. I could just click these, and now I've got mine, my package content there as well. But I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm just going to use the master form. But of course, as we go through this, you'll want to use packages because there's a lot of value in those. Okay, you can basically template out 60, 70% of your offer before you start. And of course, that would allow you to be roughly 70% done, in a matter of a few clicks. So please keep that in mind. All right, let's press next. All right, so I'm going to pick my forms. I'll start with this buyer agency agreement. On the buyer agency agreement, what you'll notice at the top is I've got Billy and myself, okay? And the system has already kind of gone through and brought in my information and anything else that it can, okay? So as you can see, it's already added a signature block here for Billy. It's already added a signature block here for myself. These gray signature blocks, just please keep in mind that these are, they're placeholders. They're like a highlighter basically saying somebody should be signing here, but nobody has. So these will not get printed. They're just sort of placeholder text when they're gray. When they're initial tags or previews or anything like that, they'll either be red or blue. Okay, so the gray ones are not important. They're just to indicate to you that something is going to happen there. Okay. As I move from this form to the next form, you're going to see that I've got Billy and myself. As I go to the next form, now I have Billy, Sally, myself, and Larry. Okay. And as I go into the document, you can see that it's pre-populated what it can. Okay. I've got my signature blocks down here, Billy and Sally, etc. What you'll notice is if I was to add another buyer by clicking people, and I can add a second buyer. Now, you'll notice that it's automatically done the tagging for that buyer. So there's two spots for the buyer to sign now, Billy and Brenda. Okay. So that's part of the smart form magic. Okay. Um, the smart forms actually do quite a bit in our system, and I should probably highlight what that is. So number one, obviously we pre-fill agreements with MLS information if we can. Okay. We pre-fill some of the information with tax data if we can get it. Um, we automatically assign and place dynamic signature tags on the form. Like as you see here, I added a Billy and a Brenda, and they automatically gave me all the tags for them. If I move to this next document again that I was on previously, you're going to notice that Brenda is here now as well, and she's also got two tags. So the smart form logic kind of keeps everything going. As long as you tell it who's who, it will keep everything going. We check the agreements for missing signatures when you send them. We provision for permissions. Okay, so if a buyer is supposed to fill in, let's say their social security number or their rental application, we provision all that. So we unlock the fields for you. So instead of you having to drag and drop your own fields around, a bunch of times, the forms are smart. So just tell the forms who they are, who you are and who's representing what, and the forms will do the rest of the work for you. So please keep all that in mind as we go through. Alrighty, so now I'm just going to remove this second buyer for the sake of the demo here. So let me just take out Brenda by clicking delete. And whoops. Here we go. Okay, so I'll fill out this form a little, okay? One thing to note here is the forms, again, they're smart. So they're dynamic in the sense that if there are sections that require you to choose section 1, 2, or 3, but not all of them, it will enable checkboxes. Checkboxes will enable those kinds of fields. So as I'm going through here, I can probably find one of those, but I'll put in a price like 500,000 here. Let's say a $50,000 deposit, and I can start checking things off. We are the buyer's agent. That's very important. It tells the system here. Um, Whatever, like today. Closing date. You'll notice that we have these warnings that tell you that's a holiday or a weekend, so try not to close there. Okay, so that's a bit of a feature again. So let's just say I want to close, I don't know, December 25th. It's going to tell me that's Christmas. So I'll just close here. Oops, there's a warning there. Again, these warnings, they're just on the screen. It's not going to print that red box. It's not going to print date conflict. It's not going to download that way. It's just showing you that I've done something wrong here. So it's probably the fact that this is later than that. So if I just moved it back here like so, that's probably going to work. There we go. I can keep going here, but obviously this is time consuming. Down here, you would accept or reject, so we can do that as we go through into the offer and so forth. I can come back to this other page now and see that this is correct. If I wanted to fill anything out on this form now, we'll just do that. So let's say the term of the BRA is from today till next month, or a couple months from now. Something like that. Okay, let's just assume I've done these and get these ready to sign. Okay, so I've got a buyer agency agreement and I've got a contract, and I'm just ready to get these signed now by myself. Okay, so I'm going to press sign. I'm going to sign them both. So I can pick and choose, obviously, by clicking in these boxes or just select all. Okay, I've got some warnings here. There's red and yellow warnings on these forms. The yellow ones are generally not that important. They're not something critical. If you see a red warning, it's probably like a pretty big error, like a missing address or a missing, name or closing date or something fairly serious, and you probably don't want to proceed. So right now I've got these yellow warnings here. That's just any field that's empty. And if I wanted to go back to the document, I can. The other thing to remind here is that these are not blocking me. I just press continue. All right, so I'm going to sign my own share now. So this is my share. I'm the buying agent. This is correct. I did my one signature. I am done. So now I'm going to sign as another. So I'll send it to the buyer. So I need to send this document to the buyer. Okay, and we'll write offer on, I forget the name of the street, so we'll just call it Main Street. And now you'll see party has come up on both of these documents. So this document, again, is live. It's cloud-based. I'm sharing access to the document, and this is another really important thing here. I'm not just printing a PDF. If I wanted to do that, I'll show you how to do that towards the end. I'm just sharing access the same way you would do with Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that, except of course we build a negotiation wall in the middle. So let me just come back here now and let us be the buyer. Okay, so Remine has, there we go. We've shared this document to the buyer. The buyer's job is to sign these. So again, you're just going to sign this by clicking this button, the buyer would. I'm going to move this over here. At this point now, it's the buyer's job to fill and sign. So if there's anything on this document that the buyer needs to fill in, he would have the ability to fill this in. But we've locked that all down on this document, so there's nothing that the buyer can adjust. On this document, he can basically adjust his address, and that's roughly it. Okay, so if there's anything else that the buyer needed to fill and sign, you can do that on this document as well. But for all intents and purposes now, he's just going to sign. So we're going to get the buyer to sign here. And again, if it was a second buyer, they would be in sequence, so it will go to the second buyer right after. The buyer can obviously, draw, type. Oops, let's get that. There we go. All right, so the buyer's got two signatures to do. Once it finishes this, it's obviously going to send all the signatures around. And we're done. And then I'm back to being the buyer agent. Okay, so obviously all I've done now is I've drafted an offer, I've signed it myself as the agent, and I've sent it to one buyer for them to sign. Okay, when I come back to my email here, let me go there. So I can see that Billy has opened my document at 10:44, and here is the summary of what he's done. So I'll open this up right now. Something is wrong with my Zoom here. I'll just refresh this. There we go. Okay, so now as I opened up that email, I've gotten this back that tells me this is for me to review. It's got a buyer, the agency agreement and my contract that I just had sent out. Now, when I'm reviewing it, again, I can see that it's been shared with my team and my party, and I see my agreements here. All right, so I've got Billy, and he's signed this document. And if I go to the other document, he's signed that one as well. There we go. Okay. And so now the interesting part would come when I want to send this to the other agent. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll go to the contract and I'm going to send it to the other agent. Ignore those warnings. We're going to send it over here to Larry and say offer on Main Street. All right, now what you're going to notice is this is version 1. Version 1 that we know has been shared with everyone. Okay, so at this stage now, I'm going to open it up as the other agent. All right, offer on Main Street. So this is another agent now, okay? Now keeping in mind, agents are like the quarterbacks of the transaction here. So you can see what's very different in this case is that this agent has the ability now to actually make changes to the document, okay? Now, the agent is gonna be asked to log in, obviously, first to validate that they are in fact the user and a member of, MAR, etc. But here, I've now got them open in this document as an agent, and I can basically say, this is not enough. And what you're going to notice here is if I just counter offered this at, let's say 520, it's going to say that that's not what the buyer agreed to. You'll notice it says everyone up here, and that page 2 will need to be re-signed. So the system is now making a full counter offer. Okay. This has now gone to private because it's me at my desk. Only I can see that. The system has created a version 2 and it's removed the signature and the date here that Billy signed because Billy signed for 500, not 520. Okay. So again, it's removed the signature for Billy. We've changed it to 520. It's highlighted and we're on version 2 that only I can see. And so maybe if I wanted to, for the sake of argument, make some other changes like that, you'll see that also comes back to being highlighted. Okay. I can change this if I wanted to, just say make it AM or something or whatever. I could change whatever I wanted to, put something in here, whatever the case may be, right? Okay. And so now I'll sign this as a listing agent. Now, the listing agent actually has nowhere to sign on this form itself. Okay. So I would send this to my seller. I know this is a bit much. I've already gone through 4 people now. So the buyer, the buyer's agent, the listing agent, and now the seller. I'm just going to get them to sign this quickly so we can continue with the demo. So Sally's going to sign. Okay. And now this is going to come back to the agent, the listing agent that is. Okay. And you're going to see here that Sally has signed it, Billy has not signed it, and we're at 520. And these are highlighted changes because those were different from what we received. And so now where kind of the magic lies is when I send this back, and it's going to go from party back to everyone. I'm going to send this back to Amir. There we go. Call it a counter offer. Now it says everyone. And I'm going to come back to my email. I'm the buyer agent now. So Larry has sent me a counter. It's telling me that I have new changes on it. And so I'm going to open that up. All right. So when I open that up, I land here. It's telling me that this is for me to review and there are new changes on this document. And what the system has now done is it has consolidated version 1 and version 2 to now show me that version 2 has the changes on it that Larry and the seller just made. So I can see here, and I'll zoom in real big, 500,000 bucks has now been changed to 520. So you can see it highlighted. The next change is 51 to 52. And the next change here is this was blank and now it says this 400. And down here, the buyer was dated and now the date is gone because we are countering and we added the date next to Sally's signature. So those are the changes on this document. So if I go from, crossing T's and dotting I's, any single comma or period we add to the document will be highlighted when it gets returned to buyer 1, okay, or buyer agent. And when this goes back and forth, all of these changes are tracked and logged in the system. So we know exactly who did what and when. And so if this ever ends up going to like court or tribunal or anything like that, it's very obvious what happened. Okay, so you have a really good solid breadcrumb trail here. So let's continue this and wrap up this deal. So you can see these are highlighted, net new changes for me. And so Billy needs to agree to these changes. So let's just get Billy to sign these quick. I'm Billy now. I'm just going to sign. And now the document's effectively done. And at this stage, I could click one of these boxes to accept or whatever I needed to do here. I can do all that later, but just make sure that this is all fine and good. I'm just going to send this back to the other agent because they need to know that we did that, right? Their copy does not have my signature on it. So there's the thing to keep in mind again here is anything that happens on your document, you have to make sure to share it so that everybody can see it, just like you would have done before with a piece of paper, 20 years ago. Just keep that in mind, that that's kind of the school of thought here, is if I change something, it's on my computer and I want them to see it, I got to just go up here and press send. Okay. So that's all done now. I'm back to being the buyer agent. This document is signed and ready to go. What I can do now is click history. And over here, what you're going to notice is my version history. So this is version 2. I can see all the changes that were made. There was 3 edits made to this document, like 520,000 and 52,000 here. These are the changes that were made to that document. I can see who shared it, who's opened it, how many people have signed it. And I can also go back to version 1. And on version 1, what you're going to see here is it's a $500,000 deal that was only signed by the buyer. And when I go back to version 2, that is now the $520,000 deal, right? That is signed here. Where is it? 520, there it is. And it's signed by both parties, okay? Obviously, if this goes back and forth and back and forth, you do not end up with this anymore. That's gone. You end up with one clean document that looks like this one that has gone back and forth, and all you're seeing is that. So I would just download this and it's clean. And if I need a reference copy to give to a lawyer or, a notary or whomever, I just click this little audit report button. Oops, I don't think I clicked it. And so then I have this audit report. And this is, as you can see, a 15-page document. On this document, we highlight everything on this that's happened on this contract. So anything that happened on this 501 form, you can see there's a version 1 and a version 2. Naturally, if it went back and forth more often, you'd have a version 3 or a version 4. Okay. And you can see everybody's interactions. You can see what time they did things, what IP address, what browser, how their signatures looked, etc. Right? So you can see Billy, desktop, Google Chrome, etc. And then last but not least, the best part, whoops. And that best part here is you have version 2 and a full PDF of version 2 right here. Okay, so this is the $520,000 offer signed by both people, a complete PDF. And then I have version 1, a complete PDF, and it's $500,000 signed by the buyer. And so where this is again compelling is, you're not seeing this and trying to make heads or tails as to who signed what where. It's very obvious that, buyer 1 had a full PDF here with 500, and then it went to buy the listing agent, and they changed it to 520, and the buyer accepted it. And if this went to 510, and then 515, and then I don't know 512, you'd have 4 versions here of this PDFs to just kind of keep track of that breadcrumb trail. Okay, coming back into the application here, just to wrap up. So that was the document creation. One other thing I want to highlight here is at any point in time, you can convert or download these into PDFs if you'd prefer. Okay, so I'm just going to open another form in my transaction. I have told you earlier on in the beginning that it's one folder per transaction. That's very critically important because everything in this 20 Tamarack folder is going to talk to each other. So in this folder, I have a Billy, a Sally, myself, and a Larry. And so if I add any other forms right now, once I open this form up, you can see Billy, Sally, myself, and Larry immediately got attached to this addendum. Okay. So now if I wanted to get this addendum signed, I can do that. But these people that were in the folder get immediately applied to this deal. And so now they're on this deal ready to go. So if I wanted to type something in here, I can do this. Okay. And now if it's some reason here now I wanted to actually just download this, I can download it or I can convert it to a PDF. Converting it to a PDF means that we're still going to be using it. It's just going to be a PDF and not a smart form. So some of that magic that I just kind of described is going to go away. And if you're not comfortable with that sort of back and forth, this is the path you're going to take. So you can see now I've converted it to a PDF and the smart form signature tags and blocks have been applied. And so now if I wanted to get this signed, it's behaving more like a regular e-signature tool that you're used to using instead of the more sophisticated smart form functionality. And so if you're more comfortable using it this way, that's the way to do that. At any point in time, if you want to download them, naturally you can just click them and download them just by doing this, right? Download. Again, keep a track always of these icons, okay? They're important. I just made that a PDF. These are the smart form icons here. Now, if I wanted to download these into one document, if you will, if I wanted to like merge them or stitch them together, you can click download. You can download them as a zip file to my computer. That's going to keep all three of them separate. You can download one PDF file to my computer. So that's going to merge those three documents into one long PDF. Or I can put the same thing into my transaction folder like such. That is going to bring them all together into one document. So it'll probably be like a 5 or 6 page document or 7 page document, whatever. And here I have it. And here we go. So it starts with that one and then it goes to the other one. And if I needed to get this signed, I could just get this one signed, right? Other functionality to touch on that I think would probably be important is the contacts. So the contacts functionality, they live actually in the Remine section of the application, not in the Docs section. So if you notice, if I go here to contacts, right here in contacts, I have quite a few. We can see Billy, Sally, Larry, and Brenda here. There are contacts. So if I wanted to create a contact, I create it here, okay, not in Docs. And then when I'm in Docs and I want to use one of those contacts, they pop up at any point in time. So as I start typing Billy, it's going to search the contacts and it's going to suggest me Billy. If I don't have a contact, like let's just call it, I don't know, Bob Roberts or something. I'm going to add an empty Bob Roberts and I'm going to add their email like this. And there you have it, right? Now I have a Bob Roberts. This will not go back to the contact section there. Contacts only sync from Remine to Docs, not backwards. So please keep that in mind. If you are an administrator of sorts, like an office manager or a broker, you'll have this impersonate function here where you're going to be able to impersonate people in your office. So if I was the broker and I had 50 people in my office, you know, and I just wanted to like impersonate one of them, I can just type in their name and I can start using their account to impersonate them, just to ensure that they're, you know, doing whatever they need, if they need help, etc. If you are an agent, your impersonation function, you have to give each other permission. So you come to Remine, you go down here and you go to settings. In these settings, then you find the impersonation section. You search up someone to give the ability to impersonate you. Like if I just type in Tom or something again here, I would get some Tom in my office. And then at that point, this person I could say has the ability to impersonate me. And then when Tom logs in, Tom would just come down here and go to switch account and he could use yours. So it's fairly self-explanatory under the guise of that you need to give each other permission. You just have to go down here to do that. And I think outside of that, it's probably not a whole lot more to cover. Package library, we talked about briefly. I can go into that a bit more detail. Same thing with clause library and checklist library. Again, these are templates that you can utilize and build these types of things to use later on in the application. Okay. One thing to note, again, if you are an administrator, there's a very big difference between my packages and the more group section. Okay. So if I'm a broker and I'm going to build something in my packages, that's just for me, I'm not sharing it. If I build it in more groups, this is the office. And so I'm going to put that in this office. And now whenever I build this content here, it's going to be distributed to the whole office. Um, I know we're a little bit long here on time, and I'm sure there's dozens of questions. So I think what we can probably do at this stage is wrap up a little bit, and I'll turn it over to my team here and see if there's like any general themes that I should address from some of these questions and discuss them.
A lot of themes for what that's worth. I guess one of the core ones I've seen, and like this is kind of tricky for us to directly address, a lot of questions about like getting like transactions from Zip Logics and other transaction management tools, how to like put them into Docs Plus. And I think that's less of a here's how and more of like a, I guess you can explain like why that may not be necessary, I suppose, or at least like the relevance of like in-flight transactions versus just having your own record keeping.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically MAR has, kind of provided this benefit in light of the NAR member benefit kind of going away with the ZipLogics deal. So, I mean, obviously that's a good thing for everybody here. I think what's important to note is, we are not affiliated with Zip. We're two completely different companies. And so extracting the information from Zip, I want you to sort of think, you have to sort of think that when that information comes out, it's your responsibility as agents to own it. It doesn't have to be in Remine. It has to be in your possession. So when you go to Zip and you're able to get all of your contracts out of Zip, once you've brought those into your own computer, into a Dropbox, into a Google Drive, or whatever the case is, it's your responsibility to own them. They don't have to be in Remine. In my recommendation would be to sort of bring the contracts into Remine that are in flight. So anything you've been working on for the last few months that you need to have signatures on, I would upload those here. I would not spend the time necessary to upload years and years of information into Remine. It's your responsibility to just have it. So as long as you have it on your computer and maybe in the cloud backed up somewhere, then that should do. And the way you would kind of bring those folders in is much like any other tool. You would just basically go to a file folder and you would just sort of like click and drag, 3 or 4 things like this. It's going to upload them all. This could be every document in a folder. And then once it's uploaded them all, I guess that's a big file. It's going to take a sec. You just add a folder name to it and go from there. So this must be like a gigantic file because it's stuck. There we go. And now I've got my folder. There we go. Alrighty. Is there anything else that's next? I don't know. Amanda, Mandy, Ryan.
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot going on in the chat in terms of trying to parse out, themes and stuff. I'm just kind of scanning through myself to try to catch up. Let's see. Just recently, this question about sharing like checklists and packages like, with respective teams. So maybe like speaking to the kind of like the hierarchy of distribution in terms of like office individual, or like there was also even just a question of like trying to revisit more groups in terms of like that concept of like how certain things are like nested.
Sure.
So I want to double back on that.
Sure. Okay. So in any of these functions over here, these libraries, you're going to have the concept of more groups than my packages. Because I'm an admin, it's going to default to more groups because the system is under the impression that you're going to be building things for your office more so. Inside of my packages, if you're an agent, it's going to default here. Those are for your own purposes. So if I wanted to build a package, it's going to be a package that I build for myself. The more groups section here, again, like I said, that's going to be your office. So as I go into this, that's my office. Again, anybody else would say, Remax or whatever. Then under here, it's going to have your list of where you are. So this is the hierarchy, right? So I've gone from pin to this office and then this sub office. Okay, so again, my account is very different than yours. Yours is going to be more logical than this. And then when you're inside of here, you just can build a package. So if I again wrote test package, I can add some forms. So I'm just going to grab a few of these, so I'm not going to pay attention, but I'll just grab a couple. And then as I go through, I can customize them. Whatever I want, and then click done. And then when I use that package, you can see the gear icon here. When I use that package, it will be distributed for everyone. So you'll see once I click done like this, it's going to say everyone in this office is going to see this immediately. If you're creating your own package, it's not going to give you that warning because it's yours. Okay, so once I click this, it's going to publish to everybody in my office. So I'm not going to do that, but there we go. All right. So again, I think just as a reference point here, it's probably 10 minutes past. So if we need to, just shoot us any questions at support@Remine. Give it a try. It's harder to follow, especially to follow 4 people at once on one screen. It's a little complicated to do that. It's a lot more intuitive just in real life. So, just give it a try, run some mock transactions, with, your another email. Okay. So if you have a Remax email, for example, and then you have a Gmail as another one, give it a try, use 2 computers and just give it a shot, see how it goes, and let us know.
All right, well, thank you so much for your presentation, everyone. I really appreciate it. So it looks like that's all the time that we have for today. As a reminder to everyone, this webinar has been recorded and will be available to view in the next few days on our website at marealtor.com. You'll find it on our webinars page in the green archive section, and you can find any upcoming webinars on that page as well. You can also find it on the Remine Docs Plus page, which we encourage you to visit. Before you close your screen today, you'll see a survey. If you could fill that out, we appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much again, Amir, Ryan, Mandy, and Amanda, for your presentation, and thank you to everyone for joining today. We hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.